But I, of course, made it worse because I said to Eagles fans, by the way, he had a much better season than Miles Sanders because
You're listening to the JAKIB Media Sports Network in partnership with AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Subscribe to the JAKIB Media channel on YouTube for access to all daily sports content.
All right, almost 7:30 here on The Fix. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Ryan Rothstein. We're live in the Prop Swap Studios, AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio, live on Twitch, twitch.tv/thefix1490. And every night, we talk to John at 7:30, our NFL Eagles insider. Follow John on Twitter at JFMcMullen, PhillyVoice.com, SI.com, host of Extending the Play, which you can listen to every Saturday at 10 a.m. John McMullen hosts, of course. All right, so let's bring John into the conversation. Minute or two early tonight, but there's a lot to get to. So David Montgomery, Tweetgate, tweets something out, deletes it. Tom Brady's drunk on boats, and there's a Tim McManus story regarding the Eagles we have to get to. So let's get it going, John. How are we doing tonight?
doing well, yeah. Goat on a boat, as they like to say.
I like that. The goat on the boat. All right, so where should we start? I don't know how much of this Tim McManus article you've read. I haven't even read the entire thing. It just got posted on ESPN.com around, I think, 5 p.m. But I can guess what it's about. I've sifted through some of it. Carson Wentz watch. The time is now or very soon for the Eagles to make a deal, which is what you and I have already talked about over the past few days, John.
Yeah, we really went into it yesterday on the show pretty extensively. I mean, you got a very short window, as I've mentioned, where you're the sort of the belle of the ball when it comes to the quarterback market. And I don't think it's going to be that way for very long. And it's already started when you hear some of the whispers about Russell Wilson even, for instance. You know, forget about Deshaun Watson. I mean, there are going to be so many options at some point if you keep playing this game of hardball, as the Eagles have been doing with Carson Wentz and his value. You might overplay your hand. So I do think there's a sense of urgency. We've been talking about it for a couple days now. I think, you know, part of this might be Jeffrey Lurie, to be honest, trying to get more than he probably can because of that $33.8 million of dead money we always talk about. And, you know, if you're going to take your medicine, take your medicine. That's kind of what I say, and that's where I think the Eagles are.
So the Colts and the Bears are the two teams we keep hearing. But what are the quarterbacks out there that those teams can potentially go to instead of the Eagles and Carson Wentz? You have Jimmy Garoppolo out in San Francisco. Kirk Cousins with the Vikings is getting thrown out more and more. So those are two off the top of my head. Any others that stand out that those teams can go to instead of Philly?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them. As I said, you know, you have the different tiers, and if you the top tier to me would be Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. I think the latter of that two is more likely to force the issue and force his way out of that situation. Then you have that mid-level. I do think it's pretty clear Minnesota's going to keep Kirk Cousins. By the way, they've been talking, and they just hired Clint Kubiak, as Gary Kubiak's son, to be their new offensive coordinator. So they want to keep the system. They want to keep the band back together. I don't necessarily know why, but that's another story. You know, but that secondary group, the Jimmy Garoppolos of the world, the Derek Carrs of the world, is probably even a little bit better, to be honest. I don't think Derek Carr gets enough credit. And even on Marcus Mariota, I'm not a fan, but yeah, if you frustrate these teams, and I look at Chicago specifically, well, you know, they can talk themselves into Marcus Mariota. He's better than Mitchell Trubisky. So it sort of how good are you? How good do you think you could be? Indianapolis is the one team that I think they look at themselves and probably correctly that say, if we can get a good quarterback, we can be a Super Bowl contender. Now, to me, I still look at them. I mean, Kansas City's still going to be there. Baltimore's still going to be there. So I don't know how realistic that is, but I think they have the right to think of themselves that way. And how do you get that type of quarterback? And can you get that type of quarterback? If it's not Russell Wilson, if it's not Deshaun Watson, if it's not Aaron Rodgers, I don't think that quarterback exists. Carson Wentz isn't that quarterback either. So you can mock all those names that we just said, but, I mean, you got to be – Eagles fans got to be more realistic. They really do. I mean, they keep talking about 2017. What the heck does 2017 have more to do with Carson Wentz than 2020? Use common sense. I mean, why would you think a team would be going back and looking at film from 2017 before he tore his ACL and his LCL and had a back fracture? Why? They're looking at 2020.
Common sense, not too common, John. And we've brought up Ertz a lot. And this is brought up in the McManus article. Why not package Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz together?
Yeah, we said that on the show yesterday as well.
Yeah.
And I mentioned the more moving parts you have, that could create difficulties. Now, that's a whole lot of money. I mean, you add Zach Ertz's contract on top of Carson Wentz's contract. I mean, that is a boatload of money. I mean, and you could argue that kind of hurts what you would get back, to be honest. Now, Indianapolis, look, there's no doubt that loves Zach Ertz as a player. And I think you would love to have him. But I think if you're Chris Ballard and you say, yeah, we have the space, we can do it. But if you want me to take both of these contracts, why am I giving you more? I would think they would give you less, to be honest.
All right, what's up with this David Montgomery tweet? Fill us in.
Well, David Montgomery. Which, by the way, there's another. I got in trouble today, as usual. David Montgomery tweeted out this weird little tweet about, essentially he loves Chicago. And it certainly could have been taken as he was saying goodbye to Chicago. So people got really excited. And they said, the Eagles are going to get there, which, by the way, would be a heck of a haul. David Montgomery had a great season this year. He was the Chicago Bears offense down the stretch when Mitchell Trubisky came back into the lineup and they made that playoff run. It was David Montgomery carrying that offense. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, that would be a haul. Give Howie Roseman a gold star, which people don't want to do. But if he's able to pull that off, turns out he was just saying he loves Chicago. It had nothing to do with football. In other words, he was saying he would like to be around Chicago even if he wasn't playing football. So it was much ado about nothing. But I, of course, made it worse because I said to Eagles fans, by the way, he had a much better season than Miles Sanders because we've talked about this before, Ryan. He's one of those players, and again, I can't figure it out. I mean, Eagles fans will not criticize that guy, and he had a bad season. A good runner, obviously an explosive runner with the long touchdowns, but he was awful in pass protection. He was even worse as a receiver, and everybody's saying, well, we need a compliment to Miles Sanders. So essentially I say, if they get David Montgomery, Miles Sanders is a compliment. Are you kidding me? You got to watch some other teams, people.
Oh, man. John, you have an article up on SI.com, and you go through Doug and his coaching staff and compare it to Sirianni and his coaching staff, meaning Doug versus Nick Sirianni, Jim Schwartz versus Jonathan Gannon, so on and so on. So, I mean, I don't think we need to go through each and every position here on the coaching staff, so to speak, and compare and give our pick, but just fill us in on how it stacked up when you went through all this.
Well, I was trying to be nice, to be honest. It's so inexperienced. A lot of it is projection with the new coaching staff. A lot of these guys are in positions that they've never been in before. For Nick, starting out with Nick, I tried to look at it as Doug Peterson in 2016 versus now, because technically he's been a professional coach, longer than Doug Peterson was back in 2016, because remember, he had a long playing career, and then was just on Andy Reid's staff and eventually kept getting promoted, got the Eagles job, whereas Nick has been around a little bit more as an assistant in different schemes with different head coaches. So maybe that's a positive. You have a more varied background. That's certainly how the Eagles have tried to spin it in the background and try to say why we've given him more autonomy, because he's been in different schemes. He's met different people. He's met different coaches. Now, I personally don't buy that because why would you penalize a guy for being successful, as I said, on a legendary coach's staff? What do you want him to do? Quit and go to a bad coach's staff to get a more varied background? It doesn't make any sense. Same thing what they did to Deuce Staley. It's like they're saying, well, he's only been here. Well, you guys loved him. You claimed. So why is he going to quit and go somewhere? I don't understand that thought process. I'll never understand it. But that's how the Eagles are kind of spinning this thing. And to be fair to Nick, I'm Nick Sirianni. I think he's about the same as Doug Peterson was in 2016. So I don't think it's fair to compare him to a Super Bowl winning coach, but we'll see. He deserves an opportunity, and I rated that as even, because I think he comes in to a similar situation as Doug Peterson, and nobody thought he would be much either in Doug's case. So I rate that as kind of even.
Talking with John McMullen, our NFL Eagles insider. Follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen, PhillyVoice.com, SI.com, host of Extending the Play every Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And we talk about the urgency behind trying to get a deal done involving Carson Wentz for Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles, and the potential impact if there isn't urgency and a move isn't made in the near future. And I've asked you this before, but I want to revisit it, the draft implications and just the overall offseason approach. I mean, we're talking about swinging and missing on deals, but the trickle-down effect for getting a deal versus not getting a deal done is going to be pretty large, correct?
Yeah, I think it's so huge for a number of reasons, not only because of the position and the player, and he's unhappy and you probably want to get him out of here, but we just talked about the coaching staff and all the new people, and they want to create a culture. They want to create an environment. And I think the worst thing you can do to them is to come into next season and come into the offseason with Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts. I think you're doing a disservice to your new coaching staff. You don't want him here. He doesn't want to be here. And if you're going to play hardball, and you're not going to have that sense of urgency and say, we need this, and if we don't get this, we're just going to grit our teeth through next season and then revisit it again in March of 2022, I think that's doing a disservice to Nick Sirianni and his entire offensive coaching staff.
So how are we predicting the Eagles' strategy in the draft? And we're skipping steps here, but just to bounce around, I mean, there's only so much speculation you and I can do, John, around Carson Wentz and when he'll be traded, where he'll be traded, and for who. We can't do 30 minutes of that every single night unless there's new information provided. So 6th overall pick, if we want to spend a few minutes with that. Wide receiver, of course, is a popular position. Quarterback, your thoughts there, or maybe offensive line or other, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they could possibly take a quarterback if Wentz is back, so that would cross him out. And that's another thing why you have to make that decision, and you have to make it quickly. We all know it. They've already made the decision, so it's really you have to again, grit your teeth and go through with what you've already decided, and then you open up everything in the draft. So, when we talk about it, everything in this offseason starts with that Carson Wentz decision and with him being out of this organization. And then you start to look at how the draft board lays, and you're number 6. And, yeah, you do have to seriously think about – I don't think you can go into this season and say Jalen Hurts is the unquestioned number 1 starter is going to be the starting quarterback of this team for the next 5 years, never mind the next decade. So if you go through your evaluation process, and let's say Justin Fields is sitting there at 6 because Lawrence is not going to be there. Zach Wilson is not going to be there. And it's unlikely Fields is going to be there, but it's at least possible. And if he does fall there and you do your due diligence and you say, this guy's going to be a star, you almost have to take him. I go back to 2016, and I remember Howie Roseman at that time, and he said, we don't plan on being this high in the draft very often. So when you're this high in the draft, you got to get it right at the quarterback position. The Eagles thought they did. Obviously, they didn't long term, and they're back in that spot again, a little bit down further, number 6. So you have to seriously think about the quarterback, and then receiver. Yeah, I mean it's really difficult when it shouldn't be, but it is when you spend years, a second-round pick on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, a first-round pick on Jalen Reagor, and you still need a receiver. But, these receivers, Jamar Chase specifically, I don't think he'll make it to 6. Devontae Smith might make it to 6 because he's so small. There's going to be some concern over how he can hold up from a physical perspective. But, hey, man, you haven't gotten it right. So you got to keep taking swings until you get it right. And I think the Eagles have an opportunity to do that finally at the receiver position, so that's got to be in the mix. And then you talk about offensive tackle, and, you have Lane Johnson coming back, but, maybe they trade Lane Johnson at right tackle. Are you that comfortable with Jordan Mailata at left tackle? What do we know about Andre Dillard, another first-round pick? Nothing, essentially. So, I mean, the Eagles can't – it's going to be very difficult to get it wrong at number 6 this year because they have so many holes. You throw a dart at the dartboard, you hit a need. Could be a quarterback, could be a wide receiver, offensive tackle. They need everything.
How about the defensive line? We just saw Tampa Bay and their front 7 and that defensive line win the Super Bowl. I mean, I know the offense played great for Tampa Bay. Awesome. But you can just look back over the past 20 years, even further if you want, and a defensive line on the Super Bowl winning team, typically very strong and dominant. So what about a guy like Barmore from the D tackle from Alabama? Like, could we see Howie and the team just trying to stack up the defensive line this year?
Well, the Eagles obviously value offensive line, defensive line above everything else with the exception of quarterback. So you're never surprised when they take an offensive or defensive lineman. But this is a year where you don't have guys who are valued that high. In other words, you're reaching for there's no edge rushers. There's a lot of edge rushers. There might be in the back half of the first round, you might see a run, but there's no top 10 edge rushers and there's no top 10 defensive tackles. There's nobody worthy of being in that spot this year. And if you are, you better trade back. And I'm not sure the Eagles are in a position to trade back because, when we talk about first-round picks and we talk about difference makers, they're in a position to where they can get a dynamic player, and they can't afford to pass on that just to take a stronger position. You mentioned you're exactly right about Tampa Bay, but also look at Devin White. I think he was the 5th pick, and that was at a position that nobody thinks is valued enough for the 5th pick. They took him because they thought he was a great player. And they were right. When you have great players, even at those devalued positions, whether it's linebacker, running back, safety. Take them. It's always about the player. And sometimes you have such a dynamic talent, it overcomes the lack of value at that position. I thought you saw it this season and certainly in the playoffs with Devin White.
Some more news surrounding the coaching staff. Tyler Brown from Michigan is joining the team for special teams quality control coach. Grew up in South Jersey. What does that mean, if anything?
No, well, his father is more. If people in South Jersey know Randy Brown, and also in the NFL, he's with the Ravens, kicking coach for Justin Tucker under John Harbaugh for years and years. Also, the mayor of Marlton, Randy Brown, former mayor of Marlton, but that's his son. So it's one of those things with the NFL. We know there's a little bit. I mentioned Clint Kubiak and Gary Kubiak. There's a little of that going on. There always is. And, it's a quality control position. It's not a big position. So he'll help with Michael Clay, who's the new special teams coordinator. But, his father has been a long-time special teams coach and a really good one. So, and he used to work for the Eagles when John Harbaugh was here. So a nice story, and obviously a local kid, and everybody knows his dad. Everybody likes his dad, and we'll see. He'll get an opportunity, and I imagine he'll get every opportunity to keep advancing in his career. A lot of that has to do with who his father is.
I mentioned Tampa Bay and the defensive line and Tom Brady getting another Super Bowl ring, and Bill Belichick, whether he was watching from home or not, he has a void to fill here, assuming Cam Newton doesn't get re-signed. I think that's a safe bet. He needs a quarterback, and, in the midst of this quarterback carousel this offseason, who could you see the Patriots ending up with under center with Bill Belichick?
I still think the Patriots might be, because I think it's pretty clear. It's been pretty clear for a long time that Kyle Shanahan wants to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think that's a domino effect. I think if the 49ers are able to do something and they're able to upgrade their quarterback situation, I think all of a sudden you have Jimmy on the open market. I think the Patriots would welcome him back with open arms. And I'm not sure that's the right decision. I'm to be honest, I'm not a big Jimmy G fan, but I think the Patriots like him, and I think they would be very, very comfortable with that. If that doesn't happen, obviously he's not on the market technically yet. They got to find a quarterback somewhere, and they're in the Carson Wentz discussions. Now, they've been in the back of the line. But we'll see. The Patriots are known as that stealthy type of organization. They're not going to leak stuff. So if they're going to have interest, they're going to be that so-called Major League Baseball-like surprise team that comes in at the very end. But I don't see that happening.
Talking with John McMullen. Follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen, PhillyVoice.com. SI.com, host of Extending the Play, every Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. The Carson Wentz story is not going to go anywhere, and I don't know. Like, do you think Howie is smarter than Twitter gives him credit for? That's an obvious statement.
That'd be tough to not be.
Yeah. But he can't be that stupid, right? Like, he knows that what the realistic price, air quotes, is for Carson Wentz. So he's willing to adjust and not take that Stafford-like deal, right? Just to bring this full circle and wrap it up.
No, I mean, that's what I'm writing about for Philly Voice, and maybe it'll get spiked if they actually make the trade. So hopefully not at this point. But I compared it to selling your car. If you're selling your car and you think it's worth whatever, $30,000, whatever, $20,000, whatever, you're not going to start at that number. You're going to ask for $25,000 and then come down to where the spot you want. So that's what Howie was doing. He knows he's not getting 2 first-round picks. He knows he's not getting the Matthew Stafford but you start there, and he got somewhere to come down to. And look, I think the bigger question is, does he have authority to just, give Carson away for Walmart clearance aisle prices? I'm not sure he has that autonomy because of Jeffrey Lurie. And I think that's why we have this little sort of stall in the negotiations. I mean, everybody in this league thought this deal would have happened by now. And that tells me that maybe Howie is getting some blowback from above.
We'll see, and we'll keep you updated every step of the way here every night at 7:30. Make sure you subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, JAKIB Media. All of John's work and content and appearances available on the YouTube channel. And John and I will do it again tomorrow, 7:30, right here on The Fix. John, I appreciate it, man, as always.
Hey, thanks, Ryan.
Of course. There he is, Johnny Mac. I'm ready for a trade. As most people are, I'm done with this, dude. I'm done with this. I love talking to John every night. My favorite part of the show. Almost daily. But it's at the point now where it's like, all right, man, we've all been dragged through the mud. We've all been, just surprised, frustrated. Okay, Carson is staying. Okay, Carson is going. You fired Doug because of Carson. No, they didn't fire Doug because of Carson. Here comes Sirianni, Frank Reich's guy. That makes sense. Wait, it doesn't matter. Carson doesn't care. It's nonsense, and it's giving me a headache. I'm over it. Get the dude out of here. Next. Let's take a break. At 8 p.m., Simon Hunter from the Action Network. Sean Green at 9 p.m. Much more still ahead on The Fix, live in the Prop Swap Studios, baby. Let's go.